2 months ago, I moved from the USA to Mexico, and since then, I've had a lot of my clients ask me, James, how is life in Mexico? How is it different to the USA? And they've told me that they have been considering moving away from the USA as well. So in this video, I'm going to share with you what life is really like living in Mexico. First, in my personal experience, I have found that people in Mexico are generally much warmer and friendlier than people in America. Now, of course, this is not a sweeping generalization of the entirety of America. I am aware that people vary between states and also counties and towns and cities and so on, right? But where I lived in San Diego, I would be walking my dog Oscar, and people would not make eye contact. People would not say hello. They wouldn't, make small talk or anything like that. But here in Mexico, when I'm walking my dog Oscar, people always say good morning. It's amazing. It's just really nice. Sometimes they will stop and have small talk, which is difficult for me not speaking the language fluently yet, but it's generally much warmer in terms of the interaction. Next, when I first moved to America, I was blown away by the massive amount of choice and availability when buying stuff. For example, I would place an order on Amazon and receive it the same day, sometimes even within the next few hours, which was insane and incredible. But outside of America, all of that goes away. For example, here in Mexico, I'm living in Hidalgo, the state of Hidalgo, and it's not a big city. It's close-ish to Mexico City, which is not too bad, but if you go further away from the big cities, the longer things will take. For example, when I buy something from Amazon here in Mexico, specifically Hidalgo, it will take me between 1 to 5 days, sometimes even longer, to arrive. Now, the next day delivery is great, but that's pretty uncommon. Usually it's between 2 to 4 days or so, which is kind of frustrating and annoying when you realize you've run out of something and you're like, oh no, I need this right now, and it's not available in stores. Which brings me to my next point. Because of the lack of availability, things sell out often, and there are lots of imports from America, and because of the recent tariffs coming about, everything is way more expensive. For example, a Christmas tree here, we're coming up to the holiday season, right? We just bought our Christmas tree, and it was roughly 30% more expensive to buy that Christmas tree than it would have been in America. So although the cost of living is a lot lower in general, which I'll get to later in this video, you will find some items are much more expensive, which can eat into your income. Third, credit is much more of a savage game here in Mexico because the interest rates are obscene. They are often above 100%, so people don't tend to use credit a lot. They typically rely on cash and their debit card, which is kind of familiar to England, where I grew up. We didn't really use credit, and people saw that in society that if you were using credit, you couldn't afford it and you were poor. That's just the mentality behind that outside of America. But we know in America, when used correctly, credit can be a great way to leverage your life. You can get opportunities you wouldn't have to get ahead in life, right? But with that said, they do have something called MSI, or months without interest. With a lot of the department stores, grocery stores, and so on, you can put things on the credit card and not pay interest on that for up to a specific period of time, sometimes up to 12 months or 18 months or more, depending on the bank or the card company you are with, which is insane. Next, a bit of a negative thing. So in America, it's very much built upon the fact that everything is efficient, speedy, and with good customer service, at least for the most part, right? But when you move out of America, you will notice and miss this so much because here in Mexico, things are less efficient and take much longer. And the customer service isn't always as great as well. Again, not to generalize, just based on my experiences so far, depending on where we've been and the place we are at. So for example, I opened a Mexico bank account when I first moved here, roughly 2 months ago, and I only just got it approved and opened. Just a normal bank account, not a credit card or anything like that, just a normal bank account here in Mexico. It took them over 2 months just to verify my information, even though I am a permanent resident here and I have all the documents. So it took them over 2 months, which meant that because Mexico is very much based upon you only can pay with a Mexican bank card, or you need a Mexican phone number, and to get a Mexican phone number, you need to have a Mexican bank account to be able to pay the bill because it's Mexican cards only, I was screwed for like nearly 2 months, which is crazy and very frustrating, especially in America. You can go online and you can open a bank account in less than 10 minutes, right? For the most part. But here in Mexico, you need to go into the branch. You need to sit there with a bank person, an employee, and say to them, I want to open a bank account. And it takes hours. You're there just waiting for them to tip tap away on their computer, and it's just so frustrating and so time consuming. And even after that, they still messed up my email address and my phone number in my account, so I had to go back again as well. So just an example there, things do take a much longer period of time. Next, from living in America for nearly 5 years, I found that there's a big focus on hustle culture, that living to work mentality. Whereas when you come out of America, you realize that life is more than just work. Everyone else has the mentality that they work to live, right? So they're going to work to provide an income for themselves, to enjoy their life, and they're not constantly thinking about work. For example, when I'm meeting people here in Mexico, the question, what do you do for work, never comes up. Like family gatherings, events, things like that, never comes up. What do you do for work? Whereas in America, at every single social gathering I've been to, and that's been a lot, right? People always ask me, James, what do you do for work? And then begins the conversation, and then it just gets into work talk. And even when I'm trying to relax, trying to have fun, he's still talking about work. Because it's so ingrained in the American culture, whereas outside of America, it's much more relaxed. It's a much slower pace of life with less emphasis on work. Next, we have the topic of healthcare, which may be a triggering topic for you right now and may even be one of the reasons you may be considering moving away from America with the climate the way it is right now and the prices going up and up and up. In the UK, where I was born and where I grew up, healthcare is free with the NHS, and you can still get private health insurance, obviously at an additional cost, with better facilities and better healthcare and so on, arguably, right? But here in Mexico, we have a similar thing. We have the IMSS, I believe it is, which is the national healthcare, like public healthcare. And we pay a very small amount for that, which is like less than $100 a month, I believe, roughly $50 US a month. And for that, you get pretty good healthcare. But then, of course, you also have the private healthcare as well. Now, I'm not an expert on this. We've only been here 2 months or so, but I have found through my research of trying to get covered with private healthcare that they don't cover pre-existing conditions. So if you are moving here from elsewhere, like a different country, and you have other issues, me personally, I have psoriasis on my scalp, which is kind of annoying, and I was taking some biologics for that in America. Here in Mexico, because I already have it and they would examine me and say, oh, you have this on your head, right? They're not going to cover it with health insurance, which is basically leaving me stranded when it comes to those biologics. So I'm currently looking at other options, maybe expat health insurance and things like that, like Cigna, which is CINGA if you're interested, and similar companies as well. But that's something which you need to keep in mind as well. If you do want to move outside of the US, if you do have an existing condition, it may not be covered in a brand new policy. The next thing is a bit of a weird one. In Mexico, household recycling does not exist. Weird, right? So in public, there will be trash cans which are separated based on organic waste, inorganic waste, and so on, right? But at home, everything goes into the same bin or trash can, and the trash collectors put everything into the same truck. Which is a little frustrating, being somebody who loves to recycle, who likes to look after the planet where possible, and everything is just going into the same trash can, into the same truck, and you feel guilty for not recycling that stuff. So just something to keep in mind if you are very environmentally friendly. Next, we have one of my favorite parts of living in Mexico, which is people love to have fun. In my experience of living in America, people are generally very serious. And of course, this depends on where you live in America, so on and so on, avoiding sweeping generalizations. But in my experience, people were often very serious at work and outside of work as well, up until you got to a point where you became very good friends with people and then they let their guard down. Whereas here in Mexico, people have less inhibitions, they are less serious, and they like to enjoy life and have a great time. For example, I went to a family birthday party for a kid, and instead of just having the birthday cake and music and so on, they just hired a whole inflatable assault course for the kid, right? Which was incredible. And I too was allowed on this inflatable assault course, and of course I did, right? And everyone else was as well. The adults and even the older people as well were having a great time. We played Hungry Hippos as well, which was amazing with bungee cords, right? But also for my birthday, we found a place which was a giant inflatable bouncy place. And this was for adults as well as kids, not just for kids. In America, I couldn't find anything similar to this unless I went to somewhere like Las Vegas. Whereas here in a small town, we have incredible stuff like this based around fun, which is incredible to see. Plus, we have the thing you're probably all wondering right now, the cost of living here in Mexico is much cheaper than in America on average. Of course, depending on where you live in Mexico, where you live in America, and so on. But in my experience, right now, we are living in a house which is double the size of our previous place in San Diego for half the price. Insane, right? The weather is also great. It's a nice area. We have a private gated community and so on and so on. The security is great. You don't need to worry about anything like that. It's great. And the cost of living in general is much lower as well in terms of groceries and everything else. So if you are earning in dollars, US dollars, getting paid in US dollars, maybe you're working remotely or something like that, or you have an online business like what I teach with digital products and online courses, you will live like a king or queen here because your money will go much further. And on the topic of work, I personally feel less stressed with no anxiety and feel much happier working here in Mexico compared to in America. Because in America, again, based on my experience, the culture is very much the case of you are expected to work until you burn out, and then you are given a couple of days to feel good again, and then you repeat the cycle again and again. It's this constant cycle of stress, working more than you should, feeling burned out, and generally disliking your life. Whereas here in Mexico, things are, again, a much slower pace of life, so it's much easier to feel happy. And because everyone's having fun as well, and everyone just enjoys their life, generally much more than in America that I've found, it's easier to feel less stressed and just happier overall. Now, if you've ever been curious about wanting to move country and or you've been watching this video to this point, your next logical question may be, James, how did you move from America to somewhere else like Mexico while still earning a great income in US dollars? Well, the answer is I sell digital products and online courses which actually help people to overcome a problem or achieve a goal they want to achieve. If you are looking for a second income which can pay you from anywhere without being restricted to a physical location, click the link in the description below this video to learn more about how you too can earn a second income selling digital products and or online courses. With that said, earlier in this video, I mentioned we are now living in a house which is double the size of the place we had in San Diego for half the cost. If you are interested in seeing inside of that house and how things look here in Mexico, and you want a tour of the place, click the video on this screen right now to see for yourself. Otherwise, if you are not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button to get more videos about having a second income with digital products and online courses, and hit the like button if you've enjoyed this video and or found it valuable as well. I'll see you very soon.